Hi, I'm Paul Floyd, a military analyst here at Stratfor, and today I'm joined by Kamran Bokhari via Skype, who is our Vice President of Middle East and South Asian Affairs. And today we'll be talking about the situation on Iraq. As we know, we have seen a ground offensive predominantly spearheaded by ISIS and some other Sunni elements within the Sunni region of Iraq that has taken large swaths of territory and several towns in this region. And so, Kamran, the first question that everyone's been asking is Iraq going to fall apart?
Well, I mean, it's in many ways, the intended Iraq or the intended Iraqi Republic is falling apart, but falling apart is a relative term. Most people think that all-out civil war is, imminent, and I don't think that's the case. We have a central government that's not able to project power into the Sunni provinces, but by no means it's losing its control over Baghdad or even the Shiite south. There is a Kurdish government in north, but to say that Iraq is falling apart, I think would be a bit too extreme.
That's a very good point. And in fact, that's exactly what we've seen on the ground, which is after the initial gains that we saw over the last week, the Iraqi army under the command of the Baghdad has done an excellent job in consolidating its position and protecting at least around Baghdad and just north and stalling this offensive, if that's what you want to call it, and kind of balancing it out. The next question everyone kind of has been asking, though, is as you said, Baghdad doesn't have that power to exert in the Sunni region anymore. Is ISIS going to be able to establish this caliphate or emirate that it constantly rhetorically says that it will do?
Well, at Stratfor, we always try to separate intent from capability. So from an intent point of view, indeed, for now, it wants an emirate, and an emirate that stretches from western Iraq into eastern Syria, and eventually turn that into a caliphate at some point in the future. But when we talk raw capability, first of all, the mainstream media has basically gone into hysteria mode with so much focus on ISIS, when in fact, ISIS is a small entity. It's playing a critical role in the uprising in the Sunni areas of Iraq. But if it didn't have the support of the masses, in other words, a general Sunni uprising, it would not be able to accomplish all of this. And so the question is, can it consolidate itself in the Sunni areas? And when that consolidation takes place, who's calling the shots? Is it ISIS? Is it Iraqi Sunni tribal elements? Who are the political principles that will be speaking on behalf of the Sunnis and trying to enhance their firepower and their overall geopolitical position? So we're really far from an emirate or a much less a caliphate. And I think that the problem is that there's just a disproportionate amount of focus on ISIS.
This also kind of leads to the next issue, which is the U.S. really can't even allow ISIS to have a space to operate, another Afghanistan, if you will. That's an imperative there. While ISIS has not shown its ability to necessarily to do transnational terrorist attacks, if you gave it that space, it possibly could. And the U.S.'s imperative in the war on terrorism has been to prevent that. And that leads to the next question, and my last question for you, which is, Iran also has some imperatives in the sense of protecting Baghdad and that Shia core and working against Sunni militants. And so there's been a lot of interesting space created for cooperation between Iran and the U.S., and I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Absolutely. And I think, Paul, you make a very critical point that there's an array of forces that are going to come in the path of ISIS, and they're coming into that path as we speak, with the preparations going from on the part of the United States and Iran, the Iraqi Shiites, the Turks, and of course the Kurdish forces. So this is a lot of arrestor in the path of ISIS. So we're not necessarily going to see it expand too far beyond the Sunni provinces. As to the issue of Iran and U.S. cooperation, definitely this is very significant, but it's not unprecedented. Even when relations were very hostile between Washington and Tehran, we saw the two sides come together and cooperate. I mean, the United States toppled the Taliban regime with significant cooperation from the Iranian regime. Likewise, when we effected regime change in Baghdad, the overthrow of the Saddam government was made possible by Iranian cooperation as well. So there's a history here. And now when relationships are actually getting better in the context of the nuclear negotiations, I think that there is even more room for Iran and the United States to cooperate. Having said that, I will also say that there is a domestic constraint on the part of, for both the Rouhani government and the Obama administration to not come too close to one another, and therefore it will appear as the United States is doing its own, actions in Iraq, mostly in the form of airstrikes, and the Iranians doing their separate thing on the ground with help to the militias and to the Iraqi security forces. But in reality, there's going to be a lot of behind-the-scenes coordination and cooperation.
Right, and to that point, we saw Kerry say that there was he would not take anything off the table when it came to cooperation with Iran, and then quickly the White House responded and said that they were not going to coordinate any actions with Tehran. Not saying that they wouldn't necessarily both achieve the same imperatives, but they would not work together, addressing that domestic constraint. Well, Kamran, this has been excellent and very interesting. For further information, Kamran had a book called Political Islam in the Age of Democratization that came out in December, and also Stratfor.com can also provide you further information. Thank you very much.